I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore Iowa stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today we're exploring perspectives on youth and education with Community School Coordinator Julian Say. Schools, with education as a priority, are now the front lines of food security, mental health, wellness, and happiness in a child's life. The challenges can test even the best of professionals dedicated to the health, welfare, and future of our children. Let's meet Julian and get an inside look at what's going on in our schools. Julian, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Hey, Peter, thanks for having me. I'm like a transplant north side guy. I grew up in Southeast Iowa and recently moved to the north side of Des Moines. I coach basketball here. I work at Harding Middle School, and I live, 4 blocks in between both of them. So I get to ride my bike and walk the neighborhood quite often.
So what do you see now, sort of, you've got kids and grown kids and young kids, and how do you see school different now than when you were growing up?
The difference that I see now is like the experience that the kids are getting, whether that is socially, whether that is classroom experience, whether that's just some fun, like, a school dance or it's a goofy water balloon fight or, something like that. It just seems like there's a push for them to be so much more mature than they need to be at some of these young ages. So, I just like to see them be kids again, not worry about so much. So.
Well, and there are a lot of challenges because we're talking about schools that have a pretty good diversity.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a sizable ethnic communities. They have probably a lot of kids that English is not their first language or their best language. And you were just telling me before the show that you had to be a little bit late because of a prayer session for one of the students. Ramadan, I presume?
Yes.
And correct. I mean, this is a very different world today, and that's integral to kids being happy. Are parents as engaged in these processes as educators and people like you in the schools are, or do you work close with parents, or does a lot of that responsibility fall on you with the kids as to dealing with all the different cultural issues and representation issues in schools?
Well, it doesn't seem like parents are as engaged when you look at, what the relationship may be like between the parents and the schools, the parents and the teachers. Like sometimes it's hard to get a hold of, or maybe there's a language barrier, or just maybe somebody's working a lot, or maybe somebody's working out of town and they can only be here on the weekends. There's a lot of barriers, and I think there is a lot of I guess I would say like cultural competency barriers that we have. Like, we're at a school, I think we're 37% Latino and Hispanic. And then after that is 20 something percent like Black and African American. And then after that, I think it's close to 15 to 17% Asian. But our highest population here is Latino, Hispanic. I'm not educated enough on the culture to even understand like what are the real barriers? Like how do we bridge this gap? How do we communicate better? How do we more involved? I graduated high school in '98, so families and parents and stuff being involved was like it was the norm, and it's not so much. Sometimes having refugee families where they come from, education is looked at differently. When the kids go to school, they're to learn everything. Whether that's social emotional learning, virtues to math to everything. That's why they went to school. Well, in our country, it seems like it's the parents do part and then the school is expected to do a part. It's interesting. I just opened my Twitter back up recently, and Kim Reynolds had tweeted at Joe Biden. And I don't even like politics, but it was a tweet about it was in response to Biden saying, the teachers loving their students like their own kids. And then Kim responded, no, they're the parents' kids, like basically do your job. And I actually responded to the tweet and said, actually, both of them can be true. Like parents, there could be a responsibility for you, but also like teachers do love their students like they're their children. And, they don't have to be, because one's president doesn't mean the other one isn't. So I still think it's a team effort. We're trying to work on the communication part right now.
Now, how about the kids? I mean, dealing with this sort of cosmopolitan community you have at the school, how are they with dealing with it? I mean, do the groups sort of stay separate, or do the kids just go being kids and they don't care?
There's groups, right? I mean, it's just like, every middle school that there ever was, right? You have your band kids, you have your show choir, you have your jocks, you have your gamers, you have the goofballs. You have a little bit of everything, and here it's the same. But what I do notice, so the kids, like, the Latino, Hispanic kids will hang with each other, the Black and African kids will hang with each other, the Asian kids, but they don't have any problems like between each other. They all hang together at times, and it kind of blends and shifts and moves. But there's not like these fights against the Latino kids and the Black kids or the Asian kids. It doesn't really happen like that. They're still kids, right? They still accept each other, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they do again. But there's no real barriers because of their race or any of those things. So.
Those are really cool points. We're going to take a short break. We come back, we'll continue our conversation with Julian. Stay tuned.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzzed and overshared again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
That's a smart idea.
So yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
While a lot is changing in our world, at Mediacom, our focus remains the same, making sure you have the fastest, most reliable connection possible. During this critical time, we know your needs are changing. You may be working or learning from home, relying on telemedicine, or finding new ways to keep everyone entertained. If you need more speed, call or go online, and Mediacom will double your speed immediately for as low as $10 more a month for 1 year.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and we're talking with Community School Coordinator Julian Say about how culture and representation is evolving in our schools, where it's strong with the kids and where it might need a little bit of work with the parents. Julian, let's continue that trend and talk about what the schools provide for kids these days that's so essential to them being healthy.
Well, right now, I think the schools realizing that they need to, have any and everything the kid needs available. I mean, we have a clothing closet here. We have, there's food pantry. There's the programming. There's, the teachers. We have social emotional learning in the schools now. I think next year they're going to roll out. It's called Web, Where Everyone Belongs. There's a lot. I think there's a lot being done from the teachers and the people who are in this building. With, little. They're doing a lot with little, right? We're in a place where, maybe there's less money available than there was before. There's less teachers available. Next year, some of the teachers, their schedules are they're going to be hard, right? They're going to teach 2 different grade levels, 2 different subjects, and still have, the same planning time they had as if they were teaching 1 subject. And still knowing that these kids have a lot of needs, from a kid not showing up for 6 days and just having to reach out and figure out like, hey, what's going on? Like, how can we help? What happened? What do you need? To supplying those needs to, it just being strictly academic. So I think people are doing what they can, but it's like we have a cup and we're like dumping water out of a boat, and not saying that it's sinking or anything. It's just we're doing the work. It just is taking a little while,
Well, you made a great point in the first segment about this is really a job for parents and teachers to do together, much like when we were younger and there was a lot more of that going on. But the fascinating thing to me is, especially when I get a chance to speak in the classrooms, is that these children today are really taking it to heart to learn about these things and bring it home to their parents. Sometimes it surprises me that I think the kids could do a great job of teaching their parents a lot of the things they're learning at school if the parents would listen. But here comes the problem that we see is so many teachers are pushed to the end because they have so much passion. It's a job that demands dedication to the kids. Yet we're looking at attrition and problems with keeping teachers employed. It's being blamed on COVID a lot, but these are trends that started even before COVID. And it almost seems as if the joy of working with the kids is being overwhelmed by the stressors within the school. Do you have any insight on some of the things going on there?
It's interesting. I think it'd be like, someone who, the belief around money often is that it makes people a certain type of a thing. And, it's like, no, it just magnifies you. If you were a jerk before you had it, and then when you get it, then, you're just going to magnify where you're at. So like COVID just put a magnifying glass on some of the things that were already, happening. And it just showed up really quick. It wasn't like a trend. It's like we were gone and we came back, and it's like, wow, like this is a real serious thing going on here. So forgive me. Where were we going with the question?
Well, I was just talking about the stress on teachers and stuff, and maybe even from the point of view of you're a basketball coach. You coach at North. Is it harder today to coach than it was before COVID, or is there something about the game? The game brings out the best in the kids.
There's a different challenge, right? So it's believed that there were like 5 learning languages at one time. I think we've got to be closer to like 15 to 20 at this point in time, because, so what we're starting to do more with our staff is we're going to create videos this off season, and we'll send videos to our guys, like what our offense will look like or what a drill will look like. So if we're going to introduce a new drill into practice, we're not just going to show up on the court, audibly do it, and then try to get them to do it, because it just seems like their focus is just different now. So I would like to send them a video prior, the day before practice. This is what we're going to put in. And then when we get to practice, they could already visually see it. Then we can do it. And now there can be questions asked because they've already seen it a little bit, but I have that luxury at basketball a little bit. But as far as like the classroom, gosh, it does have to be hard. Like the kids' focus has been stolen a little bit. I deleted my social media apps a while ago. Like I said, the only one I kept was Twitter. And like, it's been 2 days, and the amount of times that I just without even thinking about it, I pick my phone up, and I'm a 42-year-old adult who I consider myself pretty emotionally aware, and I do healthy things. I couldn't imagine being a kid these days and having access to just a phone all the time to escape or take in information or reach out to people or whatever it may be, or just be on it while a teacher's talking. It's a different world now.
Well, we'll talk about that after a short break. Maybe touch base on mental health, wellness, and happiness for kids today and what it's going to take. See y'all after the break. You don't want to miss this.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here. Wait. What?
I can't drive.
Why?
I'm high.
Oh.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening. Our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and we're talking to Julian about the challenges our school face and the challenges children face every day. But let's turn it around a little bit and take a look at the school world through the eyes of a child, from a child's point of view. Julian, can you sort of give us that view? You know, put yourself in the shoes of a kid walking into the school and what the feelings you're going through, the prep you're going through. What can you give us about that?
You know, I think it's still the same, right? I think there's still some excitement. I think there's still a little bit of anxiety of how this is going to go. I think your biggest question is which lunch table you're going to sit at that day. Are you going to sit with? That's always a big deal. Or, you know, are you going to be the creator of the table? You know, when I was in school, I was the creator of the table because I could make beats on the table. And I would use my hands and pound on the table and beatbox, and you know, people would try to rap and, you know, dance and have fun. So, you know, I still think it's the same, man. I still think at this middle school age, the kids are trying to fit in, all while trying to figure out who they are. Their bodies and their minds are going through so many different changes, you know, scientifically, like it's just a fact. So I still think it's the same, and I still just, they want to belong, and they're going to gravitate towards the people who, you know, have that passion for them, and, you know, will take time to listen to them a little bit. They have a little bit more of a voice now, and a little bit more of an opinion and a platform to speak. So, you know, I think they're searching for those adults who will listen to them and allow them to speak. So
now the news is filled with all sorts of stuff about mental health. We've got this cancel culture thing going on. We've got, you know, all this arguments about what should be funded in school and what shouldn't. Let's stay out of politics. But there's you know, this is the mental health of a child something that they're more engaged with personally now than ever before? Because I think when I was growing up, it was taken for granted. You know, nobody really, there was no social emotional learning discussion. There was no mental health discussion. But now we're taking these young children, in many respects, and immersing them in an adult world. And partially because the adult world hasn't done a good job of getting them ready. And now it's falling on the school shoulders to do it. How is that changing? How are kids responding to that? How does the word mental health resonate with kids in the middle school?
You know, in different ways, right? Like different kids are going to take it different ways. I think what we have to do around mental health is get away from the stigma of it just being like therapy. You know, it just being somebody sitting down with a therapist. Like, I mean, honestly, like these kind of moments are mental health for me. I like sitting around and having conversations with people and, you know, having philosophies on things and asking questions. Walking into a gym and hearing a basketball bounce is mental health for me. Going to yoga class, drinking my water, smelling my baby's head, hugging my son and my daughter, you know, spending time with my partner on the kayak. Like those are mental health, health moments. You know, those are therapeutic moments for me. I think what's hard for like my generation, you know, or people, or I was born in 1980, you know, so my generation have, you know, children in middle school. We felt all these same things. We didn't talk about it, right? I remember having my grandma, you could tell she would be stressed out about something or something was bothering her. And you say, "Hey, Grandma, are you okay?" And Grandma would just say, I just got some things on my mind. And then she would go right back to doing what she was doing. There was no conversation about it. There was no, well, I'm sad, or I'm feeling down because of, you know, this. So now these kids, now they're just putting words behind their feelings and their emotions. They also need to have some alternatives, right? Like if you're feeling these kind of ways, or you're having these types of responses to things going on in your life, let's look at the habits that are around you. Now, how can we replace a habit, you know, with a different habit? Like, what's a healthy way to do this versus doing this? Like, what are your goals? Where do you want to get to? Okay, you're doing this, so you're not getting to your goal, so you're feeling a certain kind of way. So maybe there's an opportunity to do this, or this happened in your family, like this happened at this certain point of time. Like, how did that make you feel? Do you wish to repeat that same thing? Okay, no. Then what are some habits we can get into right now that we can replace so we can just move the right direction? Yeah.
So children basically are the same, but what about you talked earlier about losing focus. What about all the social media and cell phones? I mean, that's a slightly different world. That sort of cuts kids out of face-to-face contact and working with people. Are you seeing an impact of media use? I mean, it's not that social media is necessarily bad, it's just how you use it. Do you see any of that impacting kids in a negative way?
I do. And the way I see it impacting them is, I guess mentioned a moment ago, it seems like they do an okay job of recognizing, like, sometimes where they're at mentally. I don't always think that their responses are right or, healthy. They're still young, so they're trying to figure it out. But their mental, emotional awareness of those around them, like their social awareness, being able to read a room or reading somebody else's, what they're going through. And that's just practice you get from spending time looking at people in the eyes. I did a basketball camp for our feeder program recently, and we were talking to the young boys, third graders, and we asked them, what part of your body do you listen with? And a lot of them said their ears, and then one boy at the end said, your eyes. And I was like, yes, tell me why. He's like, well, if you're looking at them, then that means that you're listening to them. I said, exactly. It means you're listening and you're hearing and you're empathizing and you're, so I see it. That's where I see the disconnect. That is just that human ability to sense things and to feel things in the moment, what's going around. So
that's a great point. It requires your eyes. You have to be watching the person, not your cell phone. Hey, that's a great point. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to invite you back to share some comments, insights, and advice for people just to help them better understand what's going on with kids in schools today. Stay tuned. We'll see you all after the break.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At MediaCom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power, and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared. And you can be certain we'll keep your world connected. Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening, our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
Whether it's advice on managing your anxiety or tools to help you stay grounded, Coping-19 provides a range of resources and self-care tips to help you cope with this pandemic. We can help. Find the resources that work best for you at coping-19.org.
Welcome back. Today on Surviving Bad, we're talking about climate and culture in our public schools. And it's not just about diversity and mental health. It's about a sense of community that's being nurtured in our schools. Let's see what advice Julian has to share with us about kids and school today. Julian, You're on the podium.
Yeah, I'll jump on my soapbox real quick, and I probably need a step stool to get on there. I'm not a super tall guy. I would just say whenever anyone's having a conversation, whether it be someone who works in the schools or outside of the schools or a student, an administrator, or anyone, just do your best to listen and listen in a way to increase your perspective. Just remember, it's just information. Like, it doesn't change your life at all to have somebody's words come out. And then, information turns into data. And from the data, it becomes knowledge, right? Because it moves into its different spots. And then eventually it becomes wisdom. And then what we have to remember is that there's space in between each one of those words. It's like, listening to Prince, right? Prince would be on the guitar and then he would just stop. And then when he'd come back in, bang. And that's where the exciting part is, in that pause, in that middle where there is nothing said. And there's just space to allow for opportunity. So it's just information. Then you move it to data. Then there's some knowledge. Then there's some wisdom. Just try not to put your emotions in between each word. Just have some space in there, listen, learn, and then try to create a way to help and impact.
Now, kids seem to be naturals at that. Are you talking a little bit more to parents than adults?
Right?
Well, that makes good sense. Now, what about your kids? When they go to school, what advice do you give them?
You know, I just try to tell them to be patient, to be aware, to be safe, you know, to be helpful, and just, you know, be curious. You know, there's a lot happening often. You know, information doesn't just come through our phones. It comes through all the things we see every day. You know, we watch people interact over here and we watch people interact over there. And if we stand back long enough, we can create a story. We can, you know, create something that's happened in our minds. And, you know, how do you just watch? How do you just observe those things and not create a story and just see it for what it is and people for who they are, and, you know, people having fun and laughing, or maybe there's a quick disagreement between people and you see them 5 minutes later and they got their arms around each other. So, yeah, those types of things.
Yeah, it's a fascinating world because as much as we talk about a lot of what we think is maybe wrong or not as powerful or try to give advice, children today, with all the tools at hand, once they learn how to use them, might really be able to do great things to fix these problems. I mean, I see great optimism and hope in our youth today. I'm hoping you see the same thing in our schools.
I do. It's just like we talked about earlier, you know, bringing the community together, right? You know, you have this on the higher level. Education is being used for a political tool right now. So it's really tough to have a real conversation. Yeah, so all the groups coming together, having a conversation and just moving forward is the simple fix.
That's fantastic, Manny. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us an inside look. And thank all of you for joining us on Surviving Bad today. Check out our website at healthyiowa.org. Keep your eye on MediaCom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration on MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.